Look, a story I don't think got anywhere near the coverage it deserved. It was on social media, though. Our old mate, lawyer Philip Crump, a.k.a. Thomas Cramner, I think it was, someone published it, showed that a paper had gone to Cabinet a while back from Kerry Allen, the now disgraced former Minister of Justice, facing drunk driving and fleeing the scene of an accident charges, or failing to assist police or something charges, which he's kicked down the road, that can down the road till after the election. But Kerry Allen took a proposal to Cabinet that the Cabinet would go through and find everywhere, every social program, every instance where the taxpayer was providing financial assistance to gangs, recognised gang organisations, and stop doing it. And this is coming from Kerry Allen. She from the East Coast. She from one of the bros, Cuzzy, all that stuff. Down with it, Kerry Allen says we should have defunded the gangs. But the very interesting thing was, particularly in the context of this election campaign, but the Cabinet of the day said no. Simeon Brown, National MP for Pakuranga, has made a song and dance about this, but is anyone listening? We're joined by Simeon Brown now. G'day, Simeon. Welcome back to the platform. Good to have you with us.
Good morning. Great to be back.
This is an amazing story. Firstly, I was amazed that this proposal came from Kerry Allen.
Yeah, look, I think what happened, if you remember that Labor had their Law and Order Week back in July, where they were trying to talk about law and order, and so Chris Hipkins would have asked ministers to find a range of policies that they could take to try and address the law and order problems we're facing in New Zealand. And this proposal clearly went through the Cabinet committees and all the various other processes it had to go through and got itself into a Cabinet paper. It would have had quite broad support to have got that far, but then it got knocked back at Cabinet, and government decided not to progress with doing what we think is actually the right thing to do, which is to stop any taxpayer funding going to gangs.
So when did they decide this? When did they reject this proposal?
The Cabinet meeting was my understanding, the 19th of July this year, that the paper was lodged to go to Cabinet on that date. And so...
So just 8 weeks ago?
Just 8 weeks ago. 2 months ago.
That is remarkably tone-deaf politically.
And so, of course, there's clearly disagreement within the Labor Party Cabinet over this issue. We found out about this. I put a press release out about it on Sunday afternoon.
That's right.
Chris Hipkins didn't deny it. He said, yep, we had that conversation, but we decided not to go ahead, and gave various, I think, quite weak reasons for not progressing with what is, I think, quite important.
Yeah. How much money do we give to gangs, essentially, a year? Do you know? Does anyone know?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, what we do know is they gave $2.75 million to the Mungra mob to run a meth rehab program, effectively money laundering, taking the money off them from the Proceeds of Crimes Act, and then gave it back to them.
Yeah.
Just absolute money laundering. And then we know they gave about $9,000 to help them fill out some census forms. And there'll be other funds all over the place.
Well, there are the community reports that Harry Tams. My understanding, Harry Tams made $250,000 to $300,000 a year off that, off those character reports, culture reports.
Exactly. No, that's a whole other area exactly where his organisation or himself really is making money basically to get his gangsters lower sentences, which we think is absolutely appalling. So these are what we know of so far. But what we actually proposed and Labor voted down last year was a members' bill that I had drawn from the ballot, which said that we were going to amend the Public Finance Act to make it clear that no government departments could be providing money contracts to gangs.
All right, let's take that to its natural conclusion then. Would you deny gang members social welfare?
No. And
hang on. That's a government agency providing financial support to a gang.
The definition in the bill was gangs. So there's a list of gangs, which is actually it's in legislation, and it gets updated regularly by order in council. And so it's effectively that's the process that the legislation was going to do.
But gangs are made up of members.
That's right. But the reality is the definition that we put in the legislation was quite clear.
Change
quite
the definition,
specific.
Simeon.
Well, what we don't want is we don't want contracts and government programs.
No, I think what New Zealanders don't want, Simeon, is anyone who's a gang member getting any money out of the tax take.
Well, the reality is what we've said is there's a list of gangs, and that's how we use to define that legislation for other purposes, and that's how we will stop it.
It isn't actually how you stop it. It's how you stop part of it, but you won't stop it until you say if you're a gang member, you don't get any support from the government.
Well, our position is that we want to change the Public Finance Act, which will stop gangs getting funding for contracts and for government programs and assistance via things like filling out census forms for various elements. That will stop under a national government.